You had sent me a list of some of the things that you had concerns about, and I have some ideas. But I'm wondering what is the priority for you right now? What do you feel like is the area of your life, your mind, your body, your emotional self that kind of needs the most support?
What comes to mind for that is listening to my own intuition. I think that I have a deep sense of knowing and a deep sense of what is right and what is true. And often I let other people's fears and other people's opinions and reactions and their stuff overrule my own intuition. And so I think getting in touch with my own sense of knowingness, my own sense of what is true for me is my priority.
Right. So when you say you're influenced by other people, is that an internal need to please people, or do you also feel like you're energetically influenced? Like, does other people's emotions and thoughts affect you?
Absolutely both. I think both are very true. I think that I definitely have people pleasing streak 100% of my entire life, middle child, full on kind of family dynamics, needing somebody to say, you're right, I'm wrong, you're fine, and at the same time, very much very influenced by other people's energy, very influenced by emotions around me, especially strong ones. Tone of emails can set me off. It comes through in any format: text messages, emails, phone calls, in person. If they're in a room and they're feeling it and they're not talking to me, I'm influenced by it. To the bane of my husband, he wishes that I didn't read his silent thoughts at times, but I can't. So
yeah, well, thoughts are just frequency, and you can set the radio station to the right dial. So how does that kind of show up for you in your body as you're feeling influenced by other people? Does that manifest for you physically, or is it just something kind of emotional that you are experiencing?
I definitely is in, kind of my solar plexus to my heart, kind of in that channel there is physically. Emotionally, it manifests as repetitive ruminating thoughts of, I know what's true, I know what's right, and I can get so grounded and so settled in my knowingness, and it just comes at, well, what if you are going to be, what if this is a problem? What if this is a risk? And just on a wheel, that I can be as calm as possible. And then it just comes in and it feels like this. You can kind of see me do it. It's like a folding in protective thing that my body is doing around my solar plexus. And I'd say if physically it manifests as, I can get choked up. I can, in my throat, I can get emotion will want to come out, and I'll stop it. I'll push it down, and it hurts. It gets stuck. That manifests, and then also stomach issues, just anxiety produced stomach tension happens. Those are probably the most common physical manifestations.
And what about your sleep? Do you sleep pretty well?
I sleep very well. I really never have had trouble sleeping. Yeah, sleep is great. I'm prone to nightmares. That's the only kind of downside, is that I don't have trouble falling asleep. I don't have trouble staying asleep. I did get a puppy a year ago, so it's a little bit of a caveat in the last 12 months. But largely in my life, the issue has never been sleeping. It's the very imaginative. I have to be so careful of what I watch, what I read. If I there are things where I love Buffy, but I can't watch it. It's a sense of I have to have this almost force field. I wish I didn't. I wish I was a little more resilient emotionally about what I could consume. But novels, TV shows, movies, if there's any amount of fear or violence, I will just express that in my dreams so intensely.
So are your dreams usually kind of representing things that you've seen or been exposed to, or do you have repetitive dreams, or is there a theme outside of that?
So I'd say there are definitely themes. I dream a lot about relationships, primarily romantic relationships. Um, and I dream about having, I think my biggest recurring dream of an actual specific thing is having to run away from a pursuer, and not being able to either hide, escape, run fast enough, or fight. This is just all the time. All the time there is a bad person or thing, and I'm smart in my dream, I'm fast in my dream, and I'm clever, and they're always one step ahead of me. And I can't, and it gets gruesome. It's not fun. There's that sense of I can't kill you. I can't like hurt you enough. And I hate it. It's violence in my dreams, and I can never win. I can never be safe with the pursuer in my dream.
How do you feel when you wake up?
Tired, and it's so familiar that there's not really a sense of panic around it, or a sense of there's a sense of like sadness, and I wish I could be better in my dreams and be smarter and escape it. There's a sense of a bit of, I guess, disappointment is an energy that comes in when I wake up of like, that one again.
Yeah.
Perfectionism, I suppose, is my reaction.
Yeah, no, I get that. So I'm going to talk to you about a few different things that I think would be a good place to start you on. Anytime that I'm looking at the mental or the emotional body and it's affecting the way you think, the way that you react, the way that you perceive the world and your experience of the world, I like to make sure that people have a pretty solid foundation to work from before they do any deeper work that might be disruptive, that might kick up old things that maybe their system isn't quite ready to process yet in a constructive way that's comfortable. So the first thing that I want to address is the fact that you are incredibly empathic. You feel other people, their thoughts, their emotions, your environment in a way that is very impactful to you and your well-being. And so making sure that your energy is protected, making sure that your space is maintained and is operating in a healthy way is kind of one of my top priorities for you out the gate. What happens when we're empathic is that sometimes we kind of become hoarders. We don't do it on purpose, but sometimes we tend to collect the thoughts and intentions and energies of other people or the area around us. And if we're really mindful about it, some people are really talented at staying grounded and clearing their space and putting up boundaries, and they can kind of fend things off as things come at them. But that takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of energy, and most of us aren't that disciplined. So the more empathic you are, the more likely that you've collected these energies. And what happens is it starts to cloud your field, and it starts to influence the way you think and feel in a way that's not actually organic to you. So you begin to feel other people's emotions. You begin to think other people's thoughts. You begin to have pain in the body that maybe isn't yours, depending on how much and how sensitive you are, if that makes sense. So protecting and clearing your field is really, really important in a starting point before you get into the deeper mental, emotional work, and even sometimes the physical work. A lot of times just clearing your field will get rid of a whole lot of issues just on its own. Because once you've cleared that area, it's easier to see what is yours. How do you feel? What's organically your issue to solve and not somebody else's, Maybe the pain you're feeling hasn't been yours. Maybe the anger you've been feeling actually isn't yours, So getting really clear about what's yours is a really good first step. And what I like to use for that is either sodalite or indigo. For you, I would actually recommend indigo. And the reason for that is because indigo is kind of a more crystalline form of sodalite. They share a lot of the same properties, but indigo kind of has some additional benefits to it. It works really strongly with the higher mind. So developing intuition, bringing that higher consciousness into your awareness. Because the conscious mind, it's not very intelligent. It's not actually super aware of what's going on. It's literally there to generate thoughts and talk at us and just blah, blah, blah all the time. Mm-hmm. And the voice of anxiety, the voice of fear, the voice of doubt usually comes from the conscious mind, and it tends to be very loud. Your higher mind, the mind that is connected to source, right, to infinite wisdom, to your natural healing capacities, it's a much quieter voice, because if you pay attention to certain teachers and philosophers and speakers around the world, the ones that really have a solid message usually don't have to raise their voice. It's the people who are screaming in your face. Usually their message, not that great. So bringing that higher voice into the picture for you, making your intuition louder, turning up the dial so that you can hear it better, and getting rid of those outside influences, I think that would be really beneficial for you, because you do have a lot of innate wisdom that's helping to guide you, and it's just getting lost in kind of the static noise of everything going on around you. So indigo has that property to it, which is bringing in, turning up the volume on the intuition, but it also it's that force field that you were talking about. I refer to it as the bodyguard of the gemstone world. It has kind of a twofold thing to it, which is that it draws those negative and attached energies out of your field. It helps to kind of purify your field so that you clear that space and you can see what's yours. But then it also works externally, where it keeps those energies from getting to you to begin with. It kind of draws them in and holds them so that they're not able to actually integrate into your field and start to affect you. So for people who are really busy, don't have time to just, stop every 15 minutes to ground and clear, but they're still very sensitive, having that support is profoundly helpful. It's taking a lot of weight off of you, to think about it so much, so that you can use that energy for the things that you actually need to use it for. So that's indigo. Sodalite also has that protective property, and it's wonderful for that. But it's not quite as strong on the intuitive aspect, which is kind of part of what you're looking for as well. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of go either way. The other one that I wanted to talk to you about is rhodonite. And rhodonite is something that I talk to people about a lot right now. And it's one of my favorites. It's so incredibly helpful. And what rhodonite does, it focuses on emotional foundation. So what emotional foundation essentially translates to is our body's ability to tolerate different levels of stress in a healthy way. And when we're children, our emotional foundation is being developed. We're learning how to feel about ourselves, how to feel about other people, how to feel about the world, what's good, what's bad, what's safe, what's dangerous. And depending on the situations that we're in growing up, we either develop a really healthy foundation, or sometimes we develop kind of a weak foundation, where we've established faulty beliefs that aren't going to continue to serve us down the line. It hasn't taught us how to tolerate these different levels of stress in a way that's actually sustainable or healthy. And so if that happens in childhood, and it can happen in adulthood too, you can have some kind of trauma or major stress happen, and it can damage that foundation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a childhood thing, but anytime there is that weakened or damaged emotional foundation, it's kind of like building additional stories on a cracked foundation. And as the weight gets heavier and heavier, eventually it's going to crumble, right? And when that happens, it shows up in a lot of different ways. You see things like insomnia, brain fog, anxiety, depression, autoimmune diseases, systemic pain, digestive issues. Basically, you're bailing water out of a sinking ship kind of thing.
Right.
You can't ever get ahead of it and just feel sturdy. So rhodonite is something that I love to start people with a lot of the time. Most people need a little bit. Some people need a lot of it. But actually letting it go in there and work on that foundation and strengthen it for you, so that, and it can be very subtle. Sometimes it's not one of those ones where you're just like, whoa, this is so powerful and it's blowing me away. It's trying to be gentle about it. It's being sneaky because it's wanting to fortify your foundation in a way that's not going to freak you out, if that makes sense. Some people, they get attached to their dysfunction and they want to be better, but also it's familiar. They don't really want to let that go. So having it be more gentle is beneficial because you start noticing that suddenly small things stay small. Big things aren't so bad. The everyday stressors that were just taking you out, suddenly you can kind of get through it and it gets easier and easier. And then any additional work that you want to do on top of that also becomes easier. If you have these traumas or certain things really integrated into your system that you want to try and deal or process through, when those get brought up, whether it's through using gemstones or psychotherapy or whatever that might be, you're actually going to have a system that's going to be able to support you in doing that, so that it can be productive and sustainable and move you forward, as opposed to something that might trigger an old trauma pattern and push you backwards or shut you down. So that's always my goal. Make sure people are actually fortified and feel strong enough to actually move forward, make it progressive and not damaging. The third one that I want to talk to you about is mother of pearl. And mother of pearl is, it's very nurturing to the nervous system and it's nurturing to the emotional body. It's this very cradling energy that just, it's like the essence of divine love, right? It's reminding us that we are loved, that we are love, right? And it helps us to kind of calm down and settle into ourselves and not feel quite so afraid, to not feel as vulnerable sometimes, especially if we're doing work on ourselves, where it might make us kind of start to question things a little bit and feel a little edgy. It's just kind of got this very cradling energy that just tells you that it's going to be okay. Like, we're going to get through this and we're doing this together and you have support, So using indigo, rhodonite, and mother of pearl together is something that I actually recommend pretty frequently. But it's incredibly powerful. And you can use these individually, but they kind of have a synergistic effect. You have the indigo bringing in this higher sense of intuition and protecting you while you're doing this work, and taking that extra burden off of your system so that you can focus on just working on yourself and not everybody else's stuff. You've got the rhodonite helping to repair that foundation and support you so that you are stronger and more sure of your ability to handle what you're doing. And then you have mother of pearl just kind of coming in and smoothing out the jagged edges and telling you, like, hey man, we got this. This is going to be fine. Added benefit, mother of pearl does help with sleep. And I think that with the types of dreams that you're having, I would be very curious to see if those would start to shift working with these. By taking some of that extra negative energy out of the picture before you go to sleep that your brain is trying to process, by adding these supportive emotional energies that are giving this message of safety and security, right? So that you're not constantly trying to process how to handle a dangerous situation, right? If this happens, what do I do? Can I get through it? The other part of it is, building up that emotional foundation so that you don't feel it's quite so necessary to do what everybody else wants over what you actually. because you're just going to be able to sit in yourself and go, actually, I know what I want, and it's not that. So sorry, and they'll have to process that on their own. If they're disappointed, that's their deal. It's not yours, Another one that might be appropriate for you down the line, and I do think you would probably respond to it well, is called blue lace agate. And blue lace agate is all about stepping into our true nature. I call it the baby elephant because it's like this. I have nicknames for them. It's like this. It's really beautiful. Kind of, you just look at it and you're like, whoa, this is really beautiful, and I don't know what to but also if it sits on me, it could hurt me, like not like the blue lace is going to sit on you, but it's powerful. Mm-hmm. You don't expect it to pack quite as much of a punch as it does. And it shows up for people either as a cheerleader or as a drill sergeant, I say, and I'm always curious to see which one that is. But basically the message of blue lace agate is, this is who you are. This is what you are. This is why you're here. Now do it.
Oh, right? My body just went.
Right? Yeah. But here's the thing is, you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for that message, or you'll lock up, which is why, like I said, a lot of times I start with this emotional foundation, clearing, supporting, grounding, right? Get you steady on your feet. And then when you're ready, find out if you got a cheerleader or a drill sergeant. Right.
How do you know when you're ready?
That's the really curious thing about enhancing the intuition, is that you start feeling those nudges. You start to get curious. What if? What next? Like I said, you start to know those tiny little changes in life that you're starting to integrate. And I do think that that's important, is going slow with these things. Everybody, we live in a society that wants immediate results. Get there now, bigger, better, faster, stronger, And a big part of this is integrating what you're learning and learning to live it, and make sure that it's something that's, these healthy changes are becoming habitual before you're shifting to a different gear, right? So that it's sustainable. And with the gemstones, they're not fixing or healing anything. It's not their job. They're teachers. They're reminders. They're interacting with our energy, and they're tuning it like a tuning fork to the frequency of that gemstone. And it's coming back to us as information. And it's our innate healing wisdom that has to decide how to apply that information, where to put it. That's why it's so different from person to person, how they're going to react to it, because their body has to decide, and that's part of the reason why picking the right gemstone, the right frequency, the right resonance for what's going on is kind of important, so that it's actually going to ring true for somebody. But yeah, so once you start coming more into that resonance, especially with rhodonite, like I said, noticing things becoming easier, those subtle little changes around you, you'll know that it's time. Usually, I have a lot of clients that I work with that they say, well, when should I schedule with you again? I said, you'll know. And they go, man, I was having dreams about it. I kept hearing your name in different places. I just kept thinking about it. I'm like, oh, it's probably time then, nothing.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to feel it out. It's an experiment. You might decide to start trying blue lace agate. It might be too strong for you. Maybe you have to start slow. Maybe you have to work your way into it,
It's so interesting to feel the resistance in my body to baby steps. Yeah. Like this sense of like wanting to, like this, it's physical. It's this sense of like, I don't need to start small. Like I'm better. It's this ego thing of no, give me the hardest thing right now. I'm ready. And it feels so childish. Like I can feel how young that energy is of, I need to prove to you like how emotionally and like advanced and self-aware I am. And it's like so clearly part of the issue that it's funny to feel that.
Yeah, no, I get that. And that's actually very common. You know, a lot of people don't like the idea of it not being a fast process. But most major transformation in life isn't instant. It's something that we live into, you know. Sometimes it's not
Especially
a
when you're talking about childhood trauma, because I feel like a lot of what my growth as an adult has been is like going past this foundational stuff and going into deep like work beyond that and not really addressing that foundation like you're speaking of. And I had a lot of childhood trauma, and I think that if clearly the energy I would need to address that is foundational, kind of this slow, nurturing, kind of low level, safe energy to start with before I can do something that actually matches up where my adult progress is happening. It's interesting to think of those things happening simultaneously, where in some senses of my development, I can be, you know, miles down the marathon. And in some senses, I have to start at the start.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I, in my private practice, I work with a lot of people on dealing with things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, that kind of thing. And you know, you can rehash trauma all day long. You can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but it's, if you aren't in the space, if you are not actually ready to feel things, really feel them, sit in them, and release them. And that's a big thing. Some people don't know that they're not ready to let things go because it's familiar and it's comfortable. It's more comfortable to stay in a state of disorder that you're familiar with than step into as an unknown territory, right? So it's taking that child, especially with childhood trauma, and talking to them directly and teaching them how to be safe, teaching them how to feel secure, teaching them that they have a future adult self that's now looking out for them, and that you can take care of yourself. You are safe. Everything is going to be fine. We're working on this. I've got you, right? Because a lot of us, you know, with childhood trauma, you do vacillate between feeling like a secure adult and like a vulnerable kid. And you're just like, what's happening? You know? So kind of bringing those two together and fortifying that little kid that you're working with, so that you can go, okay, tell me your story. Tell me what happened. Let's look at that. What does that mean? How do we use that now? You know, how do we move past it? So getting that foundation, and then once you feel stronger, and you'll know, because that resistance that you have will be less and less. When you think about thoughts, they'll be less and less intense. You'll have less visceral reactions to them, right? So there are subtle ways to feel that and to see, but again, it's you have to grow into it, and it's not always fast, but if you do it the right way and you honor the speed you need to go at, keyword need as opposed to want, right? Then you can start seeing those changes in a lot of really profound ways, for sure.
That's amazing. I'm very excited to go down this journey. I'm very honored to have had your intuition. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.